going to alter things around here a slight bit. The first item is citizens' concerns, and I know Jeff had written us about one he has. But we have some appointments that we need to hook it up by phone. And so I'd move that we adjourn the executive session to consider the appointment of appointed officials.
Second.
All right, we will do that. Susan, can you join us in the back room?
Out that door.
Yeah, they did. I know they did 5 years ago, I think, when I got them. But I don't know why. Everything you talk about that day, you talk about that day. I guess for that important. The important decision. You think, so you got on,
I was at the EPA.
yeah. Not fine. No, we don't let it go back.
They don't want to hear what I have to say behind my.
That's what you say, well,
Exactly. If you got it. If you've heard of it. They told me. You always tell them the truth. You don't have to work. If they aren't true.
Yeah.
They don't like my mouth.
That's something that's kind of bad. I probably don't know the answer, but you can ask me one more. Yeah. Nope. I've seen nothing. Yep.
They think that they're going to come in here to give the lip service and things like that, which is sad.
Yeah.
I get out of it.
This and land use This is on. Yeah, I know.
And they had to.
I think it was six points. Yeah, the front line.
I think it's doing it right.
I like that. And it doesn't cost
I don't know.
That was the question, because I saw that was like,
That hurts me.
what's that? That was good. Oh. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Is that actually tall?
That's how he got so
I
tall.
was gonna say, it's probably because I'm so tall, I believe that. Most people don't have the backspace to get that crap out there.
We go to a tire pressure and they, oh my God.
Don't wanna do that. You don't wanna do that.
Oh, you would do that to shit like that.
I must have like organized myself and I don't know where.
Yeah, right. I know, this is. Yes. You think the ground now?
So I think that we changed the curve.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've noticed that, none of them into that. They have the ivory ones, the gold and stainless steel. So that,
How much?
is all it's like.
The chrome covers on the outlet.
Yeah. Greg doesn't like those. You can't take that.
You know, the,
Yeah, no, I
the
think
whole is just ivory.
And the funny thing is, nobody uses those home connections.
They use the outlet.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like when they vacuum the floor.
Yeah, they don't use the old gold one.
Yeah. Probably, but I don't really feel like I need to.
I see.
Sorry, I rushed through before.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. I don't remember that.
I can't open back soon enough.
Yeah, that's right. It's brutal. All right, then I would move that we recommend to council that Susan Rowland Miller and
I'm
Scott
sorry, did we
Pearson.
move this out of executive session first, please?
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
That they be appointed to the Historic Landmarks Commission. Approved. Barry, Scott?
Approved.
Okay, then backing up now to citizens' concerns. By the way, Barry needs to leave at 6:15, so you're aware of it.
Okay.
I don't know who's, Greg, we're gonna deal with your thing in due course. It's on the agenda already. And I know Jeff had a thing about parking vehicles, which is off-visited topic. I don't know if you want to say anything, add anything to it.
I'll just put an email to you guys.
Okay. And your issue, as I understand it, maybe, do we need to have him come to the mic to get on tape?
I would prefer that, if you would mind.
That's fine.
And just name, rank, and serial number, name and address.
Jeff Hoffman, 310 Mulberry Street.
And I think this, as I recall your email, you have a trailer or similar, it's a trailer,
Correct.
that,
It's utilized 6 out of 7 days of the week.
okay. And have you gotten a letter from the city that you?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
Regarding parking behind the house.
okay.
And with me utilizing it 6, 7 days a week behind the house, it's not really feasible.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm wondering if there's a variance or an application for a variance or something that can be done.
Brody, is that basically the situation as your department understands, that Jeff has trailers and he's parking and?
That is my understanding. I had a conversation with our zoning inspector prior to this meeting, and that particular issue has been referred to the prosecutor's office. As he explained to me, he's exhausted his attempts to try to gain compliance with that, so we have officially handed it over to the prosecutor's office. That's all I know at this point. So I learned of it today, of the timeline and the effort that was put in, and that it was handed off,
Minor misdemeanor, I assume.
I believe, yeah.
And, well, you parked the vehicle
I'm parking the trailer legally in the driveway that I pay taxes on.
It's in a driveway.
It's in my driveway.
And I know you're not the inspector, Brody, but where is it located? Next to the side of the house, or?
Yes.
But that's,
And per the ordinance that was passed and revisited actually just recently,
yeah, very reasonable.
camper in the driveway, we elected not to do anything different. So not being located in a rear yard is a violation of zoning code.
Yeah.
And just to give you kind of because I think I emailed you back.
Yes, you did.
Just to kind of give you an overview of what happens at some of the other meetings that you may not be aware of. So it would have been probably a meeting or two ago, we had someone come in and ask that this be enforced more severely, the same exact thing. I don't think it's your neighbor, but they have a neighbor that's parking a camper in the front of their house that is a large RV that completely blocks their view, as they would say it. So this is one of those things, it's hard on this panel when you hear both sides of it to take action one way or another. I get the reasons for the code, I get your frustration with it, but it also is one of those things, it's really hard to address when you get complaints on both sides of it, that people don't want trailers at all on these, at these residential spots, and then some people that rely on them to utilize them. So I get the struggle there. And
And the ordinance doesn't, and I think I remember correctly, because as you said, we just revisited, it doesn't distinguish between a vehicle that may be parked there that's moved regularly. I mean, that's what's a little bit different about Jeff's case. He's moving that trailer in many of these cases. Well, in the one we had recently, I guess that was like our big RV, and that did move occasionally, didn't it? But it might sit there all week and move on the weekend. But, so I mean,
I've got plenty of documentation to back up my claim that it's moved 5-6 times a week.
yeah, but that's what I was just saying, in the other case that Corey's referring to, they moved that RV, I wouldn't say every weekend, but with some frequency. And the ordinance didn't distinguish between those two. And there, to your first question, there really isn't any variance or exception process. Now, I don't know what the prosecutor's going to do with it when you explain to the prosecutor's office, hey, I moved this vehicle 6 or 7 times a week. That's out of our hands. But we looked at this ordinance recently, went down to Planning Commission, and came back up to council, and we stuck with the version we have, because it's for, we can have 1 month someone come in objecting to a situation, and now you're the person who's objecting to the other side of the situation. So I don't know that I see anything we can do at this point, unless either of you have an idea.
I am curious, because you've been in business for a long time.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing this? For what period of time?
Almost 23 years.
You've had the same every other day movement of trailer?
Yes, sir.
It isn't a bigger trailer, it's not?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm just wondering,
It's actually a smaller trailer than what I've had in the past.
yeah, and just to, and to comment on what Tim just said, we have these different scenarios in which, communities don't want campers, trailers, and what is unique is that it's the every other day or everyday movement. I don't know, I mean, it's a different scenario, but it's a tough spot.
And also, can I refer to something in the email that was sent? My driveway was 150 feet long. 99 times out of 100, my trailer sits back at least 100 feet off of the road. So it's not anybody's line of sight from their front porch or the front of their structure. So,
Does it make it back to, let's just say, your porch area and then back?
it's almost all the way to the back corner of my house.
The back corner of your house?
Almost all the way back to the back corner of my house.
But we don't allow in side yards either? Is that, the location he's describing would be a side yard?
Correct. Correct. It's a side yard. We do not permit them in side yards. And some additional background on this particular issue is we actually received neighbor complaints regarding the overall condition of the property. And when we responded to the neighbor complaints, it was noticed that the trailer was there, so that was, in the list of complaints, I guess you could say.
So this was like a complaint driven rather than we were driving around the city and found it kind of thing. Yeah, these are tough ones to address.
Okay.
I'll just be honest with you. When I look at it and we have people come to us 1 month asking for it to be more severe and more regulatory on these being parked out front, and then the next month we have someone asking for leniency, that leads me to believe we might be good where we're at.
Okay, then Brody, may I direct a question towards you then?
Sure.
You said my case has been referred to the prosecutor. Is that citywide as well, or is that just singling me out?
No, there's been multiple people that have been notified of violations. Failure to comply then results, basically what we do is we exhaust all the efforts that we can make. The phone calls, the knocking on the door, the posting of it, the sending the letter. If we don't gain compliance, then everybody's sent to that next step. 99% of the time they're resolved, through some type of 30 to 45 day process, letters, phone calls, emails, that sort of thing.
I know you have gone down this road numerous times over the trailer last year, and it was not enforced. So I just kind of figured, okay, you know what, it's kind of a dead issue. Then when I received the letter this year, I called and spoke to Cody about it and said, this issue was really not enforced last year. And now here we are, and now I'm being informed it's going to the prosecutor. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. As a taxpayer and as a small business owner in this city, as a self-employed small business owner, this is by far one of the unfriendliest things that can be done to commerce in the city. Granted, I do not live in a commercial district. I am operating a business out of my home. And I understand every case is different. But in 150 feet of driveway, I have to park all the way back to 150 feet.
Well, I think you said you're directing the question to me, but
I'm directing the question towards everybody in council, or on the committee.
Well,
My first question was directed towards you regarding if this prosecution was citywide.
it is, yes.
Okay. Now, committee members, do you have anything to say about this? Because, again, this is a case-by-case basis. I have a neighbor who lives beside me who's an emergency plumber, leaves all hours of day and night, as I put in that email. There's no leniency towards him either then.
The laws and ordinances as they exist should be applied equally to all of our citizens. And that's what I expect. I would imagine they expect that as well.
There should be no difference between you and him.
And I can understand in a subdivision where the driveways are, 50 feet long, where you cannot get more than 2 cars in the driveway. But on a driveway that's 150 feet long, if I park the thing beside my house, out of my neighbor's sight of line of sight of his windows, what's the issue? Would you rather look out your back window and see a trailer because my driveway goes back farther than the back of his house? Or not be able to look out your side of your house because of no windows and see nothing? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, and what I would say is if you look at the code, I think you have a solution there. It may not be the one you want, which is parking it in the back. I think that causes some labor for you and some inconvenience. I understand the frustration, but that would make you compliant with the code. And so when we're looking at these, I get the subdivision argument as well, and that's one of the discussions we have when this sort of thing comes up is, hey, when we're creating these codes or we're analyzing these codes, we're trying to be as least restrictive as possible as far as city goes. If people want to have more strict codes in their HOAs and things like that, that's what those are for. But this is one that we've decided we kind of want to just keep the way it is as a city. And I get that everything we do up here is going to cause frustration for some.
And I understand that. Now, saying that I will be in compliance of this ordinance, that is also inaccurate. Because the ordinance also states I must be 5 feet off the line. I'm sorry, my driveway sits on the property line. What am I going to do now? Move my driveway, pick my house up and move it?
Okay,
That's another question.
So it says we can park a trailer in the backyard, right?
And be 5 feet off of the side of your property lines.
Okay, so so there's no way to get the trailer parked behind the house 5 feet away from the property line? Is that what you're
It
suggesting?
doesn't matter where I park it, even if I park it in the rear yard or in the back, come summertime, I'm still 5 feet off the line. I can't be 5 feet off the line. What do I do then?
I don't believe there was any, that's been the subject of enforcement, has it?
I think the 5 feet off the line, is that just for parking in the backyard? Or is that, so if you,
Otherwise, it just has to be.
so during those summer months, I think you would be compliant in your driveway, is my understanding.
Yes.
Okay? And in the winter months, if where I decide to park my trailer, it has to be 5 feet off the property line.
So it'd
Even though
be-
my-
I
Even
think-
though my driveway is on the property line.
I would think so. So in your backyard somewhere, 5 feet off the property line and in the backyard or in the rear yard would make you compliant and not be dealing with those notices.
Okay, and I just want this on the record. What is defined as the rear yard?
So you're on Mulberry Street.
Yes, sir.
You have a front plane of your house that has the front door, front porch on it. The back plane of the house, which is the side opposite of Mulberry Street. You were to draw a line north and south off the back corners of that house, anything that direction, anything towards the rear of the
So it
property.
does not need to be behind my garage.
No, correct. Your garage is in the rear yard, but it doesn't need to be behind the garage.
So I put it in front of my garage, as long as it's behind the house.
And keep in mind, the manner in which you do that, you're gonna wanna be aware there's other codes too, so I don't know how exactly you intend on doing that, but if you're messing with fences and things like that, there are codes for other things that regulate property as well. So I don't want you to,
No, I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Okay, so I believe my questions have been answered.
okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate you coming.
All right, other citizens' concerns? Oh, I saw a hand up there earlier.
I come to these things, I gotta say something. Actually, first time I've ever been in one.
Yeah, welcome.
Hello, my name is Scott King. I live at 925 Walnut Street. I believe that's proper, yes? Okay. I guess I don't see the point of the whole trailer law. If you are only outlawing the trailers for 5 months a year, I get that. If neighbors are complaining that this camper or whatever is obstructing their view, well, what's the point? If the law is in effect, what, 4 months of the year? So for the other 8 months, the guy can park his trailer in front of his house and obstruct the view, and there's, well, tough shit.
Yeah. Well, and the theory is this, is that during those summer months, those vehicles are moving
But they don't have to.
with quite a bit of frequency. I know, maybe some won't.
So I guess,
I mean, we can't do, like, I don't think with the technology yet allows us to have to, maybe it does, the GPS looking where you can see if stuff's moving or not, but that's the general theory is that, hey, sometimes people have vehicles, that's why I said Jeff was a little bit different because his is moving all the time. But in recognition of the fact a lot of people around town have like RVs and stuff that are used predominantly in the warm months, that in the warm months, okay, you can put it more toward the front where so you can get at it. But in the winter months, when it's, in many of these cases, most of these cases, again, Jeff being the exception, it sounds like, that vehicle's just sitting there, then it's gotta be in the backyard.
I get that. But like I said, if a majority of the year is going to be obstructing somebody's view, if this is what the neighbors are truly complaining about, this seems kind of pointless. I mean, you're talking, what, 60, 75% of the year, I can park my trailer in front of your window and there's nothing you can do. I mean, it seems kind of, I don't know, pointless.
Well, it's striking compromises, because people have different uses they want to make of their property. Yeah, I mean, you know, I may live next door to one, I say, I never want to see the thing. But that property owner has a right to use his property. So at times, we just have to make the rules that best serve the interests of, you know, adjacent and nearby property owners, so that everyone's either equally happy or equally unhappy.
You know?
That's the theory behind the law. And as Corey alluded to, we invariably, well, I guess it'd be about this time of year, we seems like every year we have issues come up here on both sides.
Yeah.
People like Jeff that have more liberal use of they don't want to have to shove those RVs and that type of stuff in the backyard.
Well, and another thing too, I mean, I understand the ordinance of the 5 foot, but if his house was built before that, isn't his house grandfathered in to where he doesn't have to follow it? Because, like he said, he can't move his driveway, and he can't move his house, and he can't park it in his living room. So, I mean, there has to be some kind of grandfather clause for that, at least.
Yeah, well, I think we've got that resolved in Jeff's case. So.
All right, thank you, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I got you. Other citizens' concerns? If not, when we move this meeting date, we ran it into some other commitments Barry has, so he's only going to be with us for about 5 more minutes. Conex boxes, I mean, Kate and Brody, you both kind of informally summarized what's before us, but I don't know if you want to say a little bit more formally on the official record.
This was up a month ago for you guys, and I just put it into ordinance form for you to make it look prettier. And all we're doing, this is not a substantive change to the code in any way. We're just trying to make sure that it's clear that it is prohibited in the city of Perrysburg to use things such as Connex boxes. Now you got me doing it too.
Yeah.
Connex boxes.
Oh, is that what they're called? Okay.
Semi-trailers, and shipping containers as accessory structures on property, so that they're not allowed. What is prohibited is that instead of complying with our ordinances, where if you want an accessory structure, you have to comply with our siding rules and our roof rules and our dimension rules and all of those things based on the property. Businesses or properties are putting down Connex boxes and trailers, semi-truck trailers happen a lot too, and just using them as storage outside. And so the goal is to make sure that this law has always been in effect. We just want to make sure that it's clear so that when these individuals are cited, they understand that these were always prohibited and are still prohibited, and we're making it very clear in the law. Did I do that?
Yep.
Is this, so one of the questions, I like what we're doing here with this, is just clarifying it, is the way I see it. What's the penalty for violating this one?
These are minor misdemeanors, just like all the other penalties.
Is there a way to, I don't know if we should start with piecemeal, you know what I'm about to say.
I think if we're going to do civil penalties, it needs to be when we review the whole code.
Yeah, because to me, this is really likely to happen on an LLC property for construction,
Yeah.
for all other things. And you lose quite a bit of teeth as soon as you're trying to cite an LLC with a minor misdemeanor. I mean, you put that on China's desk, good luck. You deal with the statutory agent, but you're not necessarily going to have personal liability established without a more pain in the butt fight than you'd want for something like this. So this is something I would potentially suggest we not lean on the minor misdemeanor language, because this one I see as a civil penalty where you want to kind of day-by-day fines and let them accumulate, because we can go after debt at LLCs.
Well, the next thing we look at for planning and zoning can be the penalty section. If
That I would
that
love.
might be the
I-
next best step. Because
Yeah.
one of the things that I have been asked, and I would like to have us look at, is the penalty, specifically the fine for asking forgiveness, not permission, from BZA.
Mhm.
That penalty be raised so that, yes, you put up your fence, you didn't get the permit, now you're gonna get the variance or whatever it is, but there's gonna be a fine for the fact that you didn't do it the right way the first time. Does that
Right.
make sense?
No, and
So I think this would be a good opportunity for us, this side of us, to sit down and start evaluating the penalty sections of the planning and zoning code. And do we think that there are areas where fines, not so prohibitive that people don't show up, but that there's a consequence for not doing it the right way?
Yeah, and so, Yes, and I think if you start with just that section.
Yep.
And then we start amending, so it refers to that section with the appropriate subsection within there, that would be an awesome step, because I didn't say this to Jeff, but if he switches his house to an LLC, we're gonna have a hard time getting him in court.
I think he's gonna have trouble with that, but.
Yeah, no, he's he's still gonna be on the hook because he was owning the home at the time of the violation, but realistically, if
Right.
if there
So
was an
no,
LLC
I think
listed.
that it probably won't happen by March, but
Yeah.
it's a good opportunity for us to sit down and start that conversation.
Okay, yeah, and I think this is a good ordinance that can segue into that conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you
All right.
think that this is in a position that you guys are ready to send it to council on Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's
I'll
fine.
make that motion. Okay, so we will send it to council 3-0 to recommend approval.
I even changed the name of the title for you, Tim, so you didn't have to say Connex anymore.
We're gonna need that,
Oh.
yeah, you need to put the enunciation parentheticals in there.
I just wanted it to be easier on Tim.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't know it was Connex until she corrected
Wow.
me.
I
Ever
don't
go
know
back
what
so
these
often.
were when we started this little adventure. All right, land use permits, I don't know.
That's a great recipe.
Yeah, I know, were we gonna have Greg speak to this issue, or?
I think Greg should speak first.
Okay, well, Greg, just name and address, and then I know from visiting with you what the issue is, but maybe you can explain all of us what the issue is that you found when you got another Dear John letter from the city.
I apologize, Tim, my hearing aids are on their charging port at my house. It was a long day today, and so I'm having quite a bit of trouble with the mask, hearing everybody.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
Greg Ruffey, my residential address, 26671 Foxton Court, Perrysburg. But I'm here regarding my business. Thank you. And I'm not sure if you all maybe have.
Some of this looks familiar, you know? Yep.
So, thank you first of all for allowing me time during the meeting to try to resolve land use issue for my business, but also, I believe, for the community, as my business does not fall under any use categories on the current table. Extra Virgin Food Services is a catering company with multiple types of catering services. Catering is a widely defined business, as it can include everything from a personal chef in your home to a large international company that provides food services for corporations or events like the annual LPGA tournament at Highland Meadows and air shows that have recently taken place at Toledo Express. There are also niche markets within catering like Seven Little Cupcakes that predominantly is contracted for specialty items and events, or Super Suppers that is a prepared meal service like Home Chef, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, and others. While there are hundreds of variations for catering, for the purposes of our discussion as it pertains to land use, there are basically two forms of catering: on-premise catering and off-premise catering. On-premise catering is producing food that is for consumption for any function such as a banquet, reception, or event that is held on the physical premise of the establishment or facility that is producing the food. The food is meant to be consumed on that physical premises. Off-premise catering is producing food that is for consumption at a location away from the caterer's food facility. One example of an off-premise catering food facility is a freestanding commissary, which is a kitchen facility used exclusively for the preparation of foods to be served and consumed at other locations, which is what our kitchen is. Currently, there's not a listing for catering in the land use table. It's been suggested that I could seek special permission for the current land use table to be deemed a full-service restaurant, which is allowable with a special variance in light industrial. We are not a restaurant of any type, and as you see from your packet on my food service license, we are listed as catering. I also have licensing with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, which no restaurant is licensed with the Ohio Department of Agriculture because of the type of food service that we do. If you look at the recent renewal letter from the Wood County Health Department that is also in your packet, you will see in the second to last paragraph where it says, "Do not check catering unless you have specific written approval from the Wood County Health Department to be a caterer." In order for a restaurant to cater, they have to have the proper equipment, the proper transportation vehicles to be able to get the food to where it's going. And you have to have that inspected by the health department. Many restaurants do catering for their customers, however, 90+% of them do not have the specific written approval on their license. My company's currently the third caterer that has been in Fort Meigs Business Center. In the space that I'm in now, Diane Rogers formerly occupied that space. Her and her sister Sid own the guest house across the street. Joey Scaff who owns Premier Catering. Premier Catering was located in Fort Meigs Business Center before I moved in there. My solution to the issue that we currently are faced with is to add catering as a specific use to the land use table, both as an on-premise and an off-premise, as they are different, just as the multiple choices for types of restaurants. This solution will solve the current issue of land use within the Fort Meigs Business Center and define for future development where both on and off catering may exist. I read through the minutes from the August 11th meeting, and I know one of the questions that was there was about equity and competition and lower rent rates for specific uses. My business, 67% of my revenue comes from our school catering. I get anywhere from $2.45 to $2.85 for lunch, and $1.55 to $1.85 for breakfast. My competition, obviously, is, and you know, as you go out and order food, this isn't it's not an equity issue with what we do. It's important to me as well that this be added to the use table, because it's not here on the use table now. We've grown from 1,500 square foot at our current location to 9,000 square feet in the last 10 years. We're currently in need of at least another 3,000 square feet, and it's not available in contiguous space where we are without moving another existing tenant. I cannot grow beyond 12,000 square feet in our current location. As I look for opportunities outside of Fort Meigs Business Park, it would be good to know where I can build or renovate my existing business. I've proposed wording for your review, along with suggested allowable zoning districts for each use. I base the allowable uses off of the full-service restaurant because that is what's being suggested to me, and that's the only food service establishment that allows for a special permit in light industrial. However, with off-premise, I listed as allowable versus special permission, and the difference is customer traffic, and that's one of the issues that's been presented to me from Brody in light industrial, not wanting a lot of customer traffic. A full-service restaurant would certainly provide a lot of customer traffic. As you see in my definition for off-premise, a customer would be allowed to come and pick up, but they would not be allowed to consume on the premise. As I left tonight to come here to the meeting, there was a customer that picked up 2 dozen cupcakes from 7 Little Cupcakes. Walked in, walked out. That's the type of traffic that we receive, and it's very minimal. 90+% of her business is special order. It's being delivered. 99% of what we do out of the catering is being delivered. We have had people come by and say, I don't want to pay the $25 delivery fee, I'll come pick it up. Super Suppers, it's a subscription business. It's not the same as what you may remember it when it was on Route 25, when they had an actual studio kitchen that you could come in and you could prep your own things. That does not exist anymore. We're producing the meals for consumption at home. Some are delivered. We're shipping as far as Arizona, Florida, and Georgia to customers that are snowbirds, because it is a subscription business. You pay a monthly fee, and for that fee, you get a discount off of the retail price. So our traffic there, in terms of customers, is very minimal. Again, I think the addition of these two into the use table would obviously not only benefit my business, but it'd benefit the city for anybody else looking to come in. Right now, if somebody like Joey Scaff or Mark Tees, who has the Pinnacle, wanted to build a building here in Perrysburg, there's nothing that says where they could build that building to be just a caterer. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you have, and I apologize again if you don't mind shouting at me so I can hear you.
Yeah, go.
Greg, I'm going to shout at you and say I apologize because I have a conflict and I have to leave.
Sure.
So it's not personal. So
Never take it personally.
Appreciate the business you do in Perrysburg.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Incidentally, we did look at Ken's space to move everything, including lamplight, under one roof.
Oh.
However, the real estate taxes and all the CAM charges there it didn't make sense.
Well, plus you'd have neighbors like Barry.
We would have been neighbors with Barry, yes.
What a big deal. Well, Greg, where this goes from here is, on something like this, what you're basically asking for, as far as I can tell, my initial reaction is a pretty good idea. It goes to the planning commission then to say, do we want to make this change in the zoning code? I didn't think the shoe fit very well before when Jonathan and I came out and visited your place. It was hard to see which slot you pigeonholed you into, because it's not I think you made a good point there at night that they can't even, it's not like someone can get the food, go out in the parking lot and eat their food out there, because it's all got to be taken home and prepared.
Right.
And so I thought the code just really doesn't very adequately address this type of use, and I see you kind of done some of the heavy lifting to give us a bit of a path forward for potential changes. I know I'm going to vote to refer it to the planning commission. I don't know, Corey, if you had any reaction.
I'm going to follow that lead. I think this is a great addition. I appreciate you taking the time to explain the situation thoroughly. I'd encourage you to explain the same to the planning commission when you're in front of them.
Okay.
Take the time out, make it to that meeting, because that's a panel of several people, and then they'll give a recommendation to us. But I'm glad we're doing things like this to help accommodate keeping business local. So if we can incentivize you when you're ready for that move to stay in town, and we can help with that move as well, to me, it solves the problems.
I'm not taking a position one way or the other, but I was wondering if Mr. Ruffey would consider, since he's taking it to planning commission, you're sending it there, adding may not contain a drive-through as to each of these, because I want to make sure that if it is passed by planning commission and there's a very distinctive separation between a fast food restaurant and a catering company, and I wouldn't want a fast food restaurant that didn't have any seating inside, but had a drive-through, to come through and say, we fit into this slot.
I think that's actually a really good idea,
I would
especially
agree.
with those DoorDash
That's my
pop-ups that are
concern,
coming up.
is-
Yeah.
So I'm not taking a position, I would just ask if this is gonna go forward, could we add that to?
Because I think that's a real thing that's happening all over the country, is the
Well, there's
ghost kitchens. right?
Ghost kitchens are becoming very popular. Closest thing we have to that right now is in the former KFC
Graze.
/ whatever the last 3 iterations have been prior to
The
what it is
Graze?
now.
Yep.
So,
Where's that at?
By Hot Head Burrito, in between Pizza Hut and Hot Head Burrito.
Oh, okay.
Next to
Oh,
pizza,
that
yeah.
Glaze or whatever it's
Graze,
called.
yes,
Graze? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, and Kate, I assume, I didn't know when this came to us today, if this had come from Brody or Kate, or whether you guys had worked on this, but this
Greg did
is,
all of this.
you beg pardon?
Greg did all of this.
So this is all your work products. So.
I did this one. He did this one. Brody did this one.
Oh, this
But
one is
you-
Brody's?
But I see what he did here. Like, you provided perfect information for him to put it on one page for us to really understand it quickly.
Yeah.
So thank you both for working on that.
Yeah.
Because this one-page summary is brilliant. It's not intimidating to look
I
at.
have nothing to do with that one, but I
Yeah,
think.
you had everything to do with giving him the information. That's his job, is to help with this stuff. So he's doing a good job on that.
Yeah, and then Kate and Brody, if you guys want to take Greg's materials, if you want to wordsmith them a little bit, that's fine too. If you know, because you're going to have to take I'm looking at Kate now and Brody, they're going to have to be at the planning commission too. And usually Brody, I think your office, well, not usually, but not always, makes a recommendation that this is a change that should be made or at least be considered. So I'm not expecting Greg to run a catering business plus be our law director and planning and zoning administrator all at one. But, so you guys feel free to look at this, develop your own thoughts, and then we'll go to planning commission. I almost feel bad asking you to attend, but the way you can talk about this stuff is really helpful. It was helpful before, late in the year last year, when you kind of explained your whole business, because we didn't really, I didn't fully understand all these different variations on a theme as to what's going on in the food business right now.
I'm sorry, tell him I'm not picking up everything you're saying.
Yeah, I think if you can attend planning commission and share some of this
Okay.
information, that'd be good.
I think it helps us understand also that we don't want to we want to address hurdles that people encounter while they're trying to grow their business within the city. And I think you did a really eloquent job doing that tonight. So
Thank you.
do that for the planning commission as well.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you, Greg.
Will you give me notification when that meeting? Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your time.
Yeah, thank you. In the area of other business, I said, Brody, you've got some trucks, or some cars you want to buy, right?
I have a couple of things.
Yeah, I do. This information came in to me actually yesterday, I believe, so I apologize for the reluctance in getting it to you. As you know, the supply chain and vehicles and semiconductors and all that fun stuff has caused chaos, to say the least. I spoke with a dealership out of Akron, Ohio. They were one of the successful bids for the state purchasing program. I'm sure that we don't have to go out and get competitive bidding because it's already been done on the front end. We were originally looking at electric vehicles. We were anticipating the budget. I gathered that information, provided it to the mayor. At this point in time, due to availability of affordable models, the GM Chevy Bolt is catching on fire, it's being discontinued, and the increased price of Teslas and other questions with other manufacturers, the mayor asked us to consider hybrids at this point in time. So what I am bringing to you now is a proposal here. This would be to purchase 3 of the exact same vehicles. I know this is kind of hard to go through and tell, but basically you're looking at a cost of $29,417 per vehicle. They're white Ford Escape hybrids, 2022 models. They do feature all-wheel drive. That was an upgrade over the 2-wheel drive, just when we're out and about in the slushy weather. If we can't get out and use the vehicles, that they don't do us much good. So it was recommended to go with the all-wheel drive. As I said, it is a hybrid vehicle. We didn't really add any bells and whistles other than the cold weather package. When we're out doing inspections and things like that, it's nice to have that as a feature. In the 2022 budget, we did budget $95,000 to replace our fleet. This would bring us in substantially under that, even with any decals or anything that needs to be complete. So what I've done is I've spoken with that dealer, and he said that he has an allotment, basically a reservation on a certain number of vehicles. That window is closed now, but he has basically like a lottery. He has a certain number of vehicles that he can push through the system, and once those are gone, they're gone. You have to wait till 2023. So he said if we wanted to build these, you could still make changes because they're just ghost vehicles going through a process. he's, on that allotment for it. So we'd like to act swiftly if we can, and get an ordinance in front of council for Tuesday's meeting so that we can claim one of the, I think he has 10 reservations total for the state of Ohio. We'd like to be 3 of the 10 otherwise it might be a fair amount of time before we're able to get back in the queue, and then I don't know if some conductor issue ever resolves itself.
Especially with the automotive closures that we've seen in the last week. One thing I will ask that has nothing to do with whether I'm going to pass this or not or recommend it, are we putting any signage, the city of Perrysburg logo, planning and zoning, is there any plan for that, so people?
Yes, that would be, I don't know what the new branding policy looks like in terms of vehicles, but it will be identified as a city of Perrysburg vehicle. Our department is listed as 600, 601, and 602 for vehicle numbers, so that is on there. I don't know if each division is called out specifically on the doors, but it's going to be consistent with whatever the city's branding policy is. I know some of the city Department of Public Service vehicles do say Department of Public Service on them. I don't know how ours will be branded, if it will say planning and zoning or if it's just referred to as 601.
I hope it does, because I think
It's only 601 doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I hope it says that, because I think there is, one of the benefits of this branding is having visibility throughout the city and saying, hey, your money's not going to waste, right? Or hopefully that's not the perception when they see these vehicles and you guys going to job sites and things like that. So I hope that we're using that branding in this manner.
I would be supportive of that. I think it's important to identify who we are and what we're doing. I don't know what that process looks like. We've only ever gotten hand-me-down cars.
Well, I think it's really important, especially with Grody going to site, investigate complaints and things, and you guys as well, that people know that the person that's out front is not just some random person scoping their place. So I think it is good to have that kind of announcement of who you are.
I agree. Now, is this, I'm not following, this is the state contract. I know your email, you talked with the chief about Montrose Ford. I thought that was one that was up in Michigan.
No, that's in Akron.
It's in Akron? Okay. Is that where the chief got his? Oh, that's right. You're right.
Except the most recent vehicle.
Yeah.
Is it the newest vehicles he just applied for weren't through Montrose? Or no, we tried to get them local and then we went through Montrose because our local couldn't match.
Yeah, because the
Correct,
state
yes.
contract. Yeah, okay.
So we already have that due diligence.
All right, I mean, that sounds like a good plan to me. I don't know how, Corey, what's your?
I recommend we move it to council for the next meeting.
Just so you guys are aware also, the vehicles that we have right now, the lowest mileage vehicle we have is 153,000 miles. And they're retired police SUVs that were just whipped before we got them. AC doesn't work, heat doesn't work, seat levers are broken, they're rusting. I mean, it's.
Oh, I didn't know it was that bad. I remember when we did the budget, you explained that,
There's a reason the police don't want them anymore, and
yeah.
we take them, but
I mean, I think you told us when you did your budget review, the mileage, but I didn't know you had all these other special issues.
and they've been upfitted for the police, so there's holes in the ceiling. They have lights on them that create blind spots for us when we're driving. They have big searchlights on the side. It's just far from ideal.
Well, get you helped out with that.
Yep, other business. You said you had something.
Yeah, so, and Mark just stepped out. Him and I attended, and I don't want to get too in-depth with this. I just kind of want to give Brody a heads up on the upcoming meeting we're going to have on planning and zoning and the land use plan. And I had 3 things I wanted to throw out there at this meeting. I had breakfast with Mark, although I don't think he would have called it breakfast. It was like 10:30, and I think that's way later than he's used to calling the meal breakfast. So, the first one is, and I think I got it, but yeah, I think it would be helpful going into that meeting. Is it a committee meeting on March 2nd? Okay, and then we're potentially recommending to council at that point. Before that meeting, if we could get the history of land use plans and how they, if you have a historical record of the land use plans that you can send us each one. And the reason I'm asking for that is I want a history of how the heights was or wasn't addressed in those for a better understanding, because I think that's part of what we have to, the analysis we have to go through on when we create these plans, whether we're even honoring what may have been told to them in the past. Because I think that's part of the reluctance of entering into any sort of plan in the first place. So two, one thing I would like us to potentially do, and I don't know if it's this committee, I would assume it is, but I would like to make it standard practice that when we are analyzing an annexation request, also with a zoning classification that is not its current use. So I think there's some sort of cross-reference, and maybe it just should be blanket annexation, that the Heights or people in the township that have adjacent property are also notified of those public hearings. And I don't know, that may be the practice right now, but it kind of seemed like it may not have been, from what I heard.
I would have to check with Heather on that.
She does.
Simply Township.
I believe so. I think she's, because I don't know that it says, the code states that any parcel within the city, I believe it says parcel within 200 feet.
But I guess it could be implied that the code, the city code applies to city property, so the notice applies.
So,
The
yeah.
answer is, I don't know the answer to that.
Is what some of the people had the impression that they.
Well, and what I was thinking is part of what we're running into is they feel left out of the process, or this is happening without their knowledge or their input. And one of the solutions, when I was talking to Anita Serta, I don't even know how it came up, but was, hey, when do we need to show up to try to be most effective? And I think those public hearings, when we're analyzing annexation requests, if they want to make a presence, that's an appropriate time. And when we're reviewing what we're going to zone in.
Yeah, well, the zoning, it gets assigned the zoning most closely comparable to what they have in the township, right?
On a temporary basis, while it's in transition from the township to the city. Once it comes to the city, we go through a process of assignment of permanent zoning, which we should be, in some cases, the current use is what the city's plan would say, and we'd say, just continue that. In some cases, like with the newest version of the Heights map that I drew, if a property is being used for residential purposes in Perrysburg Township, it comes into the city and we'll say it's west of my access road that I had shown on there, then we should be going through a process of assignment of permanent zoning and assigning that commercial, even if that use will continue to be residential. That's the only change agent that the city has to steer that in that direction. So we should be implementing our plan per our plan, not what somebody, and that's been the problem with what's happened in the past, is we've simply said, well, what do you want it to be, applicant? And even though we have this land use plan that spells things out, how things should develop, we've catered to specifically what that property owner wants as opposed to a guiding plan. So.
Well, and you can, and I don't know which plan this is, but it has, our land use plan, Heights is single family, and clearly that wasn't kept with when we were analyzing those annexations.
And sometimes
So
consultants will list existing conditions. And so that may not have been intended to be that this is our plan going forward. It's just an acknowledgement of the current use, and they've only planned for the city limits, which is an approach that I disagree with. I think we search for the service area, what the city could be. I think that's a more appropriate way to plan, but that's not how everybody does it.
Okay.
But I understand your larger point that you talked to Anita about is what's the mechanism that we can know
Yes.
if something's being considered? And that mechanism may already exist. From what Mark's saying, he thinks we notify everybody, but.
Well, on a rezoning, yes,
On the rezoning, yes.
there's a notification process for that.
So perhaps we need to do it with
It's
specifically.
within 200 feet?
Of the parcel, yes.
Yeah, 200 feet.
And Mark, you're pretty sure that includes outside city folks?
Because, yes, I've had that conversation with Heather on a couple of occasions for a few different properties, and she said, well, it does catch these parcels. I'm going to agree, brother, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like she said yes, but again, I'm not 100, I can't give you a definitive answer.
Okay, well, like Corey's saying, I'm glad he's raising this now, so that by the time we get to March 2, we can say either this is what we've always been doing, or it's something we can do, or we've done it sometime, whatever the correct answer is. But I think we'd all be receptive to the idea of notifying them all.
Yeah, and I think it's important to include the annexation as well, because I get the rezoning, kind of, it's a strange,
That's what we don't do that you're asking
I was gonna
for.
say, I don't think we have a
We
process.
don't-
That's a legal document that goes through here. the
When
county
a,
and
when a
the
property
Yeah.
public
owner
process.
requests to be annexed,
uh-huh.
we generally annex them because they're asking for their property to be annexed, and we don't,
But we have a public hearing, don't we?
we do, but it's after it's already gone to Wood County. So what happens is, I draft all the paperwork, assuming it's coming from me. Let me start with that. I draft all the paperwork. We have an annexation agreement in the 99-year agreement with Perrysburg Township and in the 50-year agreement with Middleton. I had to think about it for a second, sorry. I add that subsection to the agreement. I submit it to Wood County. Wood County approves it, then it comes back here, and then if you all don't do something within, I think it's 60 days, don't hold me to that statement, but I think it's 60 days, the property is not annexed. If you vote in favor of annexation, then the property is annexed.
But we do have a public hearing, right?
It comes to city council,
In some form, right?
but I'm not 100% positive that it requires a separate public hearing.
I don't believe it does.
I don't believe it
I think it's like
does.
a confirmation hearing. The county has approved it, and we're just simply saying.
Yeah, I don't ever remember having much discussion about the
No,
annexation
so
issue.
if what you're asking for is a change in that whole procedure, that when someone comes to us and says, we want to annex, you want it to start here before I start the process?
Not necessarily, so.
No, I'm
what-
not in favor.
I'm not in favor of that either.
Okay.
What I'm looking for is to prepare you for potential solutions we can look into to address at that meeting that we're gonna have next month. So one of the things I want to do is make sure notice is provided one way or another, whether it's after you get and we're doing the formality of a hearing here, whether we're gonna take action and accept that annexation.
I'd say, shouldn't they get the notice when we're changing the zoning?
Exactly.
That's what they're interested in.
So there's,
That's the later stuff that you're talking about.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's
after it's been confirmed, Brody, you know how Brody said there's that temporary,
Yeah,
that's until the city assigns the zoning?
yeah.
It goes to planning commission, and at that point, they receive notices for the permanent assignment of zoning.
Okay, and honestly, I trust you guys to figure out when would be the appropriate time to know. I want them to feel included in that process when we accept,
Well, yeah, you guys.
But
can-
that seems more
I think
appropriate.
That's where you want to
I
be.
like our process. My concern is if they're not involved in the awareness of the annexation, they're going to feel like they're not included. But I also don't think it's appropriate for, I'll say, a non-stakeholder. It's not their property. It's not the city that does the cost benefit.
I agree with that.
Necessarily try to derail.
Yeah, and it's just going to cause more points of conflict with the Heights. So they're going to mobilize and come here and try and get us not to annex it, and we aren't going to do that.
I agree with that analysis completely. If right now, the perception is we're annexing things to generate the most taxable revenue we possibly can out of that newly annexed property as far as the Heights is concerned. So if we're taking something that used to have a house on it, and now we're building a commercial, we're gonna approve a C4, I want them to get notice of when those hearings are happening.
That will happen. The only question we have to clear up is, do our city notices apply to only city residents, or is it truly?
Yes, so,
So we'll clarify that. And basically what you're saying is, if we are only notifying city residents, you want it to be interpreted as though it's any.
and I want that process to be able to be explained when they're here next on March 2nd.
We can do that.
And if we're not giving township people notice, I would hope that the administration would be in favor of adjusting internal policy to accommodate that.
I agree with Mark that I'm going to tell you there's a 99% chance that we're notifying all the properties, because when we sort on the auditor site, it doesn't differentiate between jurisdictions. But I will verify if we're not. As of tomorrow, we will be notifying everybody regardless of jurisdiction.
Policy changed.
We'll just take care of that, right? If it's a problem, right?
Okay, I just want you, because that's probably something I will bring up at the next meeting to talk about.
Okay,
Um,
just so I understand, Councilman Coleman, I just want to make sure. I have a property owner who has property, I have two, but I have one right now that's contacted me, the second one hasn't. Who has property in the Heights that is asked to annex, that I've explained the steps. He's getting the survey done for me. He's going to bring it in, and I'm going to submit it to the commission?
I do not want to stop that process.
Okay, so that's not a notification issue.
I believe
It's
people-
not till the zoning that we see a notification.
I do not want to affect people's alienation of property.
I
where
just,
they want
I just
to
want to make sure we all were, left the meeting with the same
Absolutely.
steps
That-
in mind. So I didn't do something and you said, I wanted to know about it.
To me, if people want to be a part of our city, great.
Okay,
The other thing that I can tell you in addition to that is we're talking about, between the two folks that Kate was talking about, we're now talking about 25 separate parcels in Perrysburg Heights that are being requested for annexation.
Holy smokes.
there's an individual who owns 19 parcels that has not come to me yet, but came to Brody, and is going to request annexation of those 19 parcels.
Is that the, it would be on the south side of Jefferson?
Yes.
Okay, you might be in for a heck of a wake-up call when he tries to rezone that.
And we have explained to him,
That's that one right there.
Yep, and they're well aware, and he's good.
and one of the things that has been explained to that property owner, and that Brody and I have repeatedly discussed, and will say to you as well, the land use plan would give me a document that I could say very clearly, we're happy to annex you. That's not a problem. But understand that per this plan, once this is annexed, this is going to be residential. Right now, we can all agree that the zoning will be determined as it will be, but we don't have that land use plan to cite to be able to say very clearly,
We don't have a defensible court document that illustrates the city's clear intent and purpose with that land going forward.
so that's just one of the advantages to Brody's map and the land use plan. is-
We have to make it not seem arbitrary.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
Yes.
So, and I don't know what the court's analysis would be on ongoing measures to preserve a district like the Heights.
Absolutely.
But I would imagine the extensive conversations we're going through right now would kind of give us some defense. So that's perfect info. I'm glad, honestly, that is going to be a real-time example of why a plan might be beneficial. Next one is, do the adjacent township lines affect zoning requirements? So I guess to give you an example, there was somewhat of an allegation made that they don't necessarily have to create a buffer on these commercial properties that they would have been required to create within the city if it were surrounded by city stuff.
Buffers them to a residential, how there are certain requirements.
So what you're saying is, the city code only applies to city properties.
Yes.
So, for example, if Taco Bell wanted to expand back into a Taco Bell version 2 in the back of it, and it was up against a property from the Heights, the city's code would not recognize the residential property in Perrysburg Heights as a residential property.
Mhm.
The city code protects city-owned properties and its residents.
Okay.
So they don't have that same protection as if they were in the city. It would require a screen wall or
Yeah.
whatever that case.
Is there a tool that, so, and you don't have to answer this tonight, this is why we're hashing it out right now. Is there a tool we could use moving forward if something's zoned and still abutting a residential area that's not necessarily in the city, to still require that buffer be created?
Well,
And again, you don't have to answer, but keep in mind, maybe the language needs to be, or any annexable.
flexible.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you tried to do with that concept you presented last time.
No, that's absolutely the concept he's trying to,
And that was my sarcastic answer, was you adopt my land use, my drawing, you adopt that and take care of it. But the non-sarcastic answer is what you're saying is, you would have to build in something that specifically provides that protection. And that would be an oddity of the code, to protect a property not in the jurisdiction.
well,
But we can do that.
and I think what we have to also approach this is, we have to realize the Heights is an oddity in and of itself in the way the township exists surrounded by city. So that's an oddity in and of itself,
Well,
so.
but part of that is answered by your earlier
Yeah.
question, Corey. If they're at the hearing where we're considering assignment of zoning, you guys are probably going to be recommending all the things you usually recommend. Okay, Mr. property owner, you want commercial here? Well, here's what you need to do on the back end of this thing to screen it from the neighbors. So
And
I know what you're saying is I guess you addressed it, but you said that's an oddity, but there'd be some magic language where you'd say you'd agree to,
it's weird.
to treat the newly annexed property in a manner that helps benefit any adjacent residential uses or.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, and I'm not saying that any of us would use it that way, but codes oftentimes have carrots that dangle in front of folks who are not in that jurisdiction to lure them into that. Because people are like, I want the safety, the security, I want the assurances that zoning provides, so I'm going to come into the city. And part of that is making it undesirable to exist in a jurisdiction outside of that.
Yeah, you're right.
From a competitive standpoint.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we're in that mode, but I'm saying that may have been.
Well, we
That's
have
a
to,
factor.
we also have to, I mean, when we're talking about this, we have to acknowledge the logistical effects of if we annex the entirety of the Heights, the increase in taxes they would face that would drive them out naturally, or potentially be a hardship. So, I mean, we just gotta acknowledge that. So like, it's strange,
I
but,
think that might actually be a misconception. And the property owner that owns the next properties, we had a conversation about this, and he's like, there are tax advantages to me through property tax and services where I'll actually be financially better off in the city. I said, I agree with you, because we've actually run scenarios through the finance department back when Dave Krebs was here, and we demonstrated on every example case study that I can remember, it was a tax reduction to come into the city. The only exception to that was if you had an S corp.
gotcha.
For some reason, that was different, but actually, people would have more money in their pockets at the end of the day being in the jurisdiction of the city of Perrysburg.
Because they don't have to pay for refuse pickup and,
Outside water and sewer fees, refuse,
Oh, yeah,
And the
because they're the
taxes.
district too.
taxes were just kind of a wash, so it was actually a savings.
So, and I think that's something I will talk about at the next meeting, that the inconsistency of asking for things from the city while not paying taxes into this city and trying to control what our plan, I mean, that's
okay.
probably a fool's errand.
You better have a whip and a chair if you're.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. But that aside, and I think we answered my last one, but what I will also say is the only concern I have, and I would like a potential viable option, I understand the logic of that line and the roadway. And I also understand that there's likely never going to be city acquiring property to make that roadway happen. It just creates as a 3-lot buffer rather than a 1. But to me, that roadway and really any buffer you create with green space otherwise creates an idea of eminent domain eventually. I think any city acquired property, if you acquire enough of it and you don't get the last 4 of them, yeah.
So that remains a concern there.
So
expressed.
absolutely. And eminent domain, I wouldn't say I necessarily agree with the.
You're saying if we set the stage and we can't achieve it, then they're suggesting that if we couldn't achieve it, then we take it.
Yes, but also anytime you're talking about the city changing something that a city would own the property to create, like a roadway, they're gonna lean to eminent domain and destroying.
Well,
And when I say they, the residents who live there in the lots that exist where the roadway would be, that's a very real thing.
I agree with that. That is kind of where that last conversation went.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't want to do is suggest that that is not a possibility ever into the future, because if we ever have to solve traffic issues on State Route 25 as those side streets develop without a collector road like that along the backside, an access road, if you look at all the jurisdictions around, the successful ones with traffic planning, they're doing this. And I don't want to say that we won't ever do that, because if that's the solution to a problem that exists on State Route 25, a worsening problem for, congestion and safety, I would want to reserve the right to do that in the future, letting people know that's not why we're doing it now. We truly have good intentions of doing this, but I don't want to mislead somebody by not showing.
If there's a plausible other plan option that doesn't necessarily require city-owned property, we may want to have that readily available, that's all I'll say. So something that maybe just draws a hard line, we're keeping this portion on residential, and this we're considering under, And I don't think anybody will be happy with that, but maybe we should have that prepared as well.
The last thing that I can mention in terms of the heights is the property owner that Kate was describing that had actually reached out and is starting the process for annexation. It's a series of 6 parcels. He purchased these to kind of square off his property behind the Taco Bell. Had a conversation with him in Kate's office and showed him this, the plan that I drew up and said, here's one option that's floating out there right now. We don't know if it has traction or not. He said, this is absolutely a great idea. I would support this. He said that he would provide the city a first right of refusal for the parcels that are in those areas if we'd ever want to implement that. He thought it was a great idea. So there may be people like that that we see in those commercial areas that are like-minded, and they might be the ones that are purchasing that.
And that's a real potential. And I think there's a real possibility that the heights just get left out of the plan altogether. We'll see what happens March 2nd. But I know that's something that's
going to be on their agenda, because I thought the idea Brody gave us last time, I thought that gained some acceptance here. Now, I know Mark said it didn't appear to be the case last night.
I don't think Paul is very much open to that idea.
I heard,
would be my perception, and
Paul wasn't too good last night. He was just, I didn't like what he was saying.
I don't want to throw him under the bus. I'd rather say it to his face when he's here, but
I haven't really liked anything he said, but certain things he's been, I've been telling people in the neighborhood, he's kind of misleading at certain points to something he said.
it's.
I've been told the same.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't agree
with
with.
A few people say, "Oh, you're full of." I said, "Well, I've lived out there 34 years. I'm still staying out there and not going nowhere." But I says, I'd rather have the city come in and take over, because I've been there 34 years in the township. In the last few years, just keep pushing us further and further down. I just feel like the township's almost throwing us under the bus. I feel like this. I mean, I know a couple of the trustees and this and the other. I'm never friends with one of the trustees. They don't worry about us like we're almost, they said, we're not farmers, don't worry about us, but we're not farmers, so just go, just move on.
Interesting.
It's just not right.
I will say I did not agree with Paul's analysis of the plan that Brody presented at the last meeting.
Wow, that's disappointing to hear. I've known Paul for a long time, and that isn't his MO. Usually, I don't know.
I got nothing further.
Okay.